Jimin Cries, Jungkook loses control. What really happened? The global music world froze in disbelief as an uncharacteristic outburst from Jungkook collided with a tearful revelation from Jimin, creating one of the most shocking moments in BTS's public history. Why did the youngest member, known for his calm professionalism, suddenly lose control? And why did Jimin, often the group's source of comfort and composure, break into tears in the aftermath? These questions have ignited a storm of speculation, pushing fans and analysts alike to reconsider the fragile balance between fame, pressure, and human endurance. Eyewitness accounts describe a scene charged with chaos from the instant Jungkook's vehicle arrived. The crowd surged, cameras erupted in flashes, and the claustrophobic atmosphere tightened with each passing second. In that moment, the golden image of Jungkook, the golden magne who has long embodied poise under scrutiny, fractured before millions. His voice rose, his gestures sharpened, and his irritation became visible in a rare display of raw emotion. For many fans present, the incident was not just surprising, it was disorienting, a rupture in the carefully maintained narrative of perfection that surrounds BTS. Yet what followed was even more unexpected. Jimin, the member most often described as gentle, empathetic, and steady, could not contain his emotions. His visible tears, reportedly shed in private conversations and later hinted at through remarks, transformed the story from a fleeting public spectacle into a global phenomenon. What did Jimin see or feel in that moment that others could not? And why did his words later resonate so powerfully with millions of fans worldwide? To understand this sequence, one must first consider the relentless circumstances leading to Jungkook's visible loss of composure. BTS has existed for over a decade under a microscope of global intensity, where every step, word, and glance is magnified. Jungkook, despite his youth, has borne the weight of this scrutiny since adolescence. The intrusion of personal space, amplified during crowded arrivals and departures, represents not just a physical violation, but an ongoing erosion of privacy. Observers that night witnessed not merely irritation, but the culmination of years of accumulated stress. His body language screamed exhaustion, his expression betrayed the limits of endurance, and for the first time, his controlled facade slipped. The footage spread instantly, looping endlessly across platforms. But raw video tells only part of the story. Jimin's later words revealed a deeper reality, one hidden behind the brevity of the viral clip. He pointed to the silent, invisible burdens of constant observation. His commentary suggested that Jungkook's reaction was not born in that single moment, but rather in countless unseen ones. The endless travel, the lack of solitude, the perpetual demand for performance. For fans who had only seconds of footage, Jimin's voice provided context, bridging spectacle with meaning. His tears underscored the emotional gravity that words alone could not carry. The duality of this incident, Jungkook's sudden display of anger and Jimin's breaking point of sorrow, exposed the very core of what it means to live under global fame. It is a reality few can truly comprehend, where admiration becomes suffocating and where even love from fans morphs into a force of pressure. The emotional cost is not abstract. It is lived, felt, and, in this case, painfully revealed in real time. For the ARMY, the incident has unleashed a maelstrom of reactions. Some fans expressed disbelief, struggling to reconcile the polished image of Jungkook with the frustration on screen. Others were quick to defend him, insisting that boundaries had long been crossed and that his response was not only justified but overdue. Meanwhile, Jimin's vulnerability ignited a parallel discussion. If even the group's emotional anchor could be brought to tears, what does that say about the hidden strain BTS members endure behind closed doors? Critically, this moment also raises profound ethical questions about the relationship between celebrity, media, and fandom. At what point does admiration become intrusion? How much pressure can a human being withstand before cracks inevitably show? Jungkook's loss of composure serves as a case study in the limits of human endurance, and Jimin's emotional response adds a haunting layer. The cost is not just physical exhaustion, but emotional fracture, shared among those closest to him. Social discourse around the event has not been uniform. While many voiced empathy, a subset of commentators seized the opportunity to sensationalize. Headlines exaggerated the severity of Jungkook's anger, framing it as a breakdown rather than a momentary expression of frustration. Misinterpretations of Jimin's remarks fueled further confusion, with some falsely portraying his words as admissions of deeper instability within the group. In truth, nothing indicates internal discord. Both incidents were outward-facing, born of external stressors rather than internal divisions. Still, the misreporting illustrates how quickly narratives can spiral in the digital age. The speed at which speculation spread illustrates another unsettling reality. In the modern media ecosystem, a fragment of truth can mutate into a distorted narrative within minutes. Short clips stripped of context create exaggerated impressions, while commentary, sometimes well-intentioned, sometimes opportunistic, can fuel misunderstandings. Jungkook's irritation, though fleeting, became inflated into a narrative of collapse. Jimin's empathetic remarks, though grounded in compassion, were twisted into signals of internal conflict. The truth lies somewhere far simpler, yet the viral machinery resists simplicity. At its core, the incident is a reminder of humanity beneath spectacle. Jungkook did not collapse, he reacted. Jimin did not signal crisis, he empathized. Both moments, though extraordinary in their visibility, are profoundly ordinary in their human essence. Every individual has limits. Every individual can cry. But when the individuals in question are global icons, their human responses become magnified into cultural touchstones. For analysts of pop culture, the event is more than gossip. It is a case study in the cost of celebrity in the digital age. The simultaneous eruption of Jungkook's frustration and Jimin's sorrow reveals the intersection of performance, expectation, and reality. Fans who consume only the polished product, the concerts, the albums, the interviews, rarely see the fracture points. This time, they did. And the collective gasp it triggered was not only about surprise, but about recognition. Recognition that even idols, shielded by management and framed by perfection, remain fragile. What remains unresolved is how this moment will shape the dynamic between BTS and their fandom moving forward. Will the ARMY, so often described as devoted and protective, translate empathy into action by respecting boundaries more consciously? Will the media, now faced with criticism over sensationalist framing, adjust its approach? Or will the entire episode fade into the archives of viral spectacle, remembered only for its shock value rather than its deeper implications? These questions remain unanswered, but they are unavoidable in the wake of what has transpired. The broader lesson is unmistakable. Fame without empathy is unsustainable. The machinery of global stardom consumes relentlessly, and the individuals within it cannot remain untouched. Jungkook's moment of visible anger and Jimin's visible tears converge as a warning, one that resonates not only with fans but with anyone who consumes celebrity culture. They reveal not weakness, but humanity, stripped of artifice, captured by cameras and multiplied into billions of impressions online. In the end, what happened that night is not simply a spectacle, nor a scandal, nor a fleeting blip of drama. It is a mirror, reflecting the human cost behind global adoration. Jungkook lost control. Jimin cried. And in those two actions, the world was reminded that idols are not untouchable. They are human. They bleed under pressure. They break under strain. And when the world watches without pause, they eventually reveal the cracks no image can forever conceal. What lingers after the incident is not only the shock of what unfolded, but the silence that followed. Jungkook has returned to scheduled activities with visible professionalism, yet the image of his clenched jaw and raised voice remains embedded in public consciousness. Jimin, too, has continued his commitments, But the memory of his tears has redefined the way many fans perceive his role within the group. Together, their reactions serve as a dual reminder of the pressures that exist behind the facade of perfection. The spectacle was brief, but the echo will last far longer than the moment itself. Observers now argue that the real significance of this event lies not in the outburst, but in the conversation it has forced. Fans are reconsidering boundaries, analysts are re-examining the machinery of fame, and the media is being called to account for its role in magnifying private strain into global drama. The narrative has shifted from mere scandal to an urgent dialogue about sustainability, respect, and the ethical responsibility owed to those who live in the public eye. Jungkook's frustration and Jimin's tears may one day fade into the long chronology of BTS's history, but for now, they remain a piercing symbol of the fragile balance between idolization and intrusion. In that balance lies the unanswered question: will the world finally learn to respect the human limits of those it claims to love? The unresolved questions: reality or fabrication? The incident described has spread with extraordinary speed, magnified by platforms such as TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, and countless secondary outlets that thrive on immediacy rather than verified accuracy. Yet the fundamental question remains: do we truly know what occurred? Or are we simply participants in a spectacle shaped, exaggerated, and manipulated by forces we scarcely acknowledge? At every stage of this discourse, one must ask: are we engaging with fact, or are we consuming illusion? If Jungkook's outburst was indeed spontaneous, we must confront what it means for an individual so relentlessly scrutinized to finally yield under pressure. But what if it was not spontaneous? What if this very moment was orchestrated, subtly encouraged, if not outright staged, for the sake of reinvigorating media attention and maintaining narrative relevance in an era where visibility is currency? Do we accept what we see at face value, or do we challenge the possibility that even pain can be commodified? Which interpretation is more disturbing? That the event was real, exposing raw human fragility before billions, or that it was designed, reducing human struggle to a performative device? These are not idle questions. They demand engagement. They force each reader, each viewer, each self-proclaimed witness to interrogate their own complicity. When we replay the footage, when we share the clip, when we dissect Jimin's tears in online forums, are we honoring authenticity? Or are we fueling a machine that feeds on unverified fragments? Do we not risk becoming participants in the very cycle of sensationalism we claim to condemn? The burden of verification in our era, information flows at a velocity that defies traditional checks. Newsrooms, fan accounts, influencers, all compete in a race to be first, not necessarily correct. Thus, we must ask, who benefits from the speed of circulation? Whose interests are served when fragments of video travel faster than full accounts? And at what point do we, as consumers, acknowledge that we are engaging with media not for truth, but for the stimulation of our own emotions? It is significant that the sources of this story are diffuse and unstable. TikTok clips truncated by editing, YouTube compilations shaped by algorithmic incentives, Twitter threads riddled with conjecture. Can such sources be treated as historical record? Or must we recognize them as fragments of digital rumor, precarious and manipulable? If the latter, why then do we allow them to shape our perception of reality? Do we not risk erasing the line between fact and fiction altogether? Skepticism as a duty. It is not enough to feel sympathy for Jimin's tears or frustration at Jungkook's breaking point. Sympathy is passive. What is required is skepticism, the disciplined refusal to accept unverified claims as truth. Yet here lies a paradox. Does skepticism itself render us cold, cynical, detached from genuine suffering? If we doubt the authenticity of what we see, do we also risk invalidating real human pain? Or conversely, if we fail to doubt, do we not become enablers of deception? Where should the ethical balance lie? Each reader must confront this tension. When you, the observer, Recall the image of Jungkook's clenched jaw or Jimin's reddened eyes. What do you believe you are seeing? Is it a man overcome by exhaustion? Or is it a narrative already sculpted by invisible hands? What is more unsettling? That truth is fragile, or that illusion is pervasive? The economics of spectacle. No discussion of this incident can ignore the economic undercurrents. BTS is not merely a group of individuals, they are a global brand, a financial entity generating billions in revenue. In such a context, does any incident remain unmediated? Or is everything, by necessity, subsumed into the logic of publicity? Might an outburst, however authentic, be retroactively reinterpreted by management as a strategic moment to galvanize attention? If so, where does authenticity end and commodification begin? Ask yourself, when millions of fans debate this event online, are they participating in a community of concern, or are they unwittingly amplifying corporate visibility? Does media outrage not ultimately reinforce the very structures it claims to critique? Can we truly separate emotional reaction from economic function in a world where every click is monetized? The psychology of belief. Why do people so readily accept what they see? Perhaps it is because believing is easier than doubting. Yet is it not also true that disbelief requires greater courage, demanding that we resist the comfort of consensus? If the crowd insists that Jungkook broke down, do you dare to ask whether he did? If thousands declare Jimin's tears as evidence of deeper turmoil, do you challenge the validity of that claim, or do you submit to collective emotion? Consider your own reactions. Did you feel shock? Did you feel sadness? Did you feel anger at the invading crowd? But then ask, upon what evidence did you base those emotions? Were they grounded in verifiable fact, or in fragments of narrative carefully shaped by media repetition? How often do we feel first and question later, if we ever question at all? The ethics of consumption. At what point does watching become exploitation? If Jungkook's anger was authentic, then by sharing the video, do we not become complicit in perpetuating the very intrusion that triggered it? If Jimin's tears were genuine, then by dissecting them online, do we not reduce private grief into public entertainment? What responsibility do we bear as spectators who amplify suffering for the sake of our own engagement? The issue is not limited to BTS. It extends to every figure subjected to the relentless lens of digital culture. But the global scale of this incident magnifies its ethical stakes. Millions now face a choice: to perpetuate the cycle of uncritical sharing, or to pause, reflect, and demand verifiable truth before participating further. Which choice will you make? The provocation of doubt. Perhaps the most urgent question is this: what if none of it was real? What if the entire sequence, Jungkook's supposed loss of control, Jimin's apparent breakdown, was exaggerated or even fabricated, amplified to satisfy an audience conditioned to consume drama? Would that revelation not destabilize our confidence in every future report? And if so, is it not necessary to cultivate doubt as a permanent stance, rather than an occasional reflex? Ask yourself, would you prefer the incident to be authentic, even if it exposes painful human fragility? Or would you prefer it to be fabricated, reducing human beings to pawns of spectacle? Which outcome would trouble you more profoundly? The call to reflection. Readers must not emerge from this discourse unchanged. You are invited, no, compelled, to interrogate your own position. Do you believe this incident occurred as described? Or do you suspect manipulation, exaggeration, fabrication? How confident are you in your answer? And on what evidence do you rely? What standards of proof are you willing to demand before granting belief? In this digital era, where truth is porous and narratives are unstable, skepticism is no longer optional. It is a duty. Yet skepticism alone is insufficient unless coupled with reflection. Reflection on your role as consumer, as participant, as amplifier. Will you continue to accept media fragments uncritically, or will you discipline yourself to pause, to verify, to resist? Conclusion: a choice before us all. Jungkook's voice, Jimin's tears, the crowd's chaos. Whether authentic or orchestrated, they now reside in the archive of public memory. But memory itself is fragile, shaped by the forces that mold it. What remains decisive is not whether the incident was real or staged, but how we respond to its circulation. Do we allow ourselves to be swayed by spectacle, or do we assert the right to doubt, to question, to withhold belief until evidence compels us otherwise? The invitation is before you now. Reflect on your own reactions. Reflect on your readiness to believe. Reflect on the possibility that what you consume as truth may, in fact, be illusion. And ask, finally, are you willing to embrace skepticism not as cynicism, but as responsibility? Or will you continue to drift within the current of sensation, surrendering your judgment to the machinery of media spectacle? The answer, unsettling though it may be, rests not with Jungkook or Jimin, not with media corporations or fan collectives, but with you. What remains, therefore, is a moral crossroad. Will the public accept the incident as authentic testimony of human frailty, or will they dismiss it as calculated theater? To believe uncritically is to risk becoming a pawn of sensationalism. To doubt without reflection is to risk erasing genuine suffering. Which danger is greater? That we are deceived, or that we refuse to recognize truth when it stands before us? This dilemma demands vigilance. Every headline, every clip, every whispered commentary must be interrogated. Who produced it? For what purpose? With what consequences? If your answer is uncertain, then why do you still allow yourself to be persuaded? Thus, the question is not merely whether Jungkook and Jimin revealed their vulnerability, but whether we as observers possess the courage to scrutinize the spectacle. Will you, the reader, accept the comfort of consensus, or will you resist, insisting on evidence before surrendering belief? In that resistance lies the only path to integrity.